channel for anyone who would want to go through it again later on. And we're also streaming live on YouTube and live on Facebook as we speak. So in case we have too many people, we can redirect people to our YouTube and Facebook channels and options to view. A very, very good evening, I think, wherever you are. Greetings, wherever you are. And thank you so much for joining us on this second webinar session of the Nigerian Society of Engineers Glasgow branch in 2021. So this is our second webinar session this year. And it's a general one. It's not technically engineering, but it's something that is needed to help engineers and everyone, every human being to function properly. We need to take good care of our mental health to be able to work well as engineers or whichever profession we belong to. And the branch has seen that this is important, especially with the COVID-19. And that's why we've organized this one today. So a quick rundown through the program. We'll be having welcome remarks from the branch chairman, and then from the national president who we have in our midst. So the branch chairman will invite the national president for quick, brief welcome remarks. And thereafter, I would introduce the speaker for today who would present his presentation. And then we'd have some question and answer session as usual, interactive sections. And finally, final remarks and the announcement and vote of thanks. So without much ado, I'll hand over to the chairman of the branch for his welcome address. Chairman, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Salifu. Thanks for that brief introduction. As you said, we find out that at this critical time, we need more than just the technical to, even at the technical, we seems to be stuck at some point now. So we need something to look after ourselves. As they will say, the health is wealth. So we want to make sure that we are mentally stable, health-wise, and we'll be able to perform well in our various works and professions. And that's why we think, oh, this is the right time for us to put this webinar together. We are not really concerned about the numbers that is joining us today, because we know that is a very sensitive topic and people have to embrace it and accept it the way they want. So, and without any wasting too much of our time today, I just want to introduce the Nigerian Society of Engineers in Nigeria, the president, which is here with us, and Engineer Mohammed Babagana, FNSC. President is someone that has a passion and love for this branch. So if he's not without himself, will not have this branch. So we appreciate him. He's been joining us and make sure we are on the right track. I would like to introduce bring Babagana to the platform, Engineer Babagana, to say one or two things. President, it's over to you, sir.
My chairman, thank you very much. Let me align myself with the protocol established by my chairman. I appreciate my chairman for doing a good job and all of you down there. And I also pray for you because the COVID-19, the second wave, is serious. Please be very careful. Your families are very important to us. You are very important to us. Please stay within the protocols. Do not take chance. Please do not take chances. We don't have that time. But we cannot come back and be lamenting. If I know, no, there's nothing if. We are engineers. No if, please. And then Glasgow branch, please keep doing what we are doing. This is our profession. All of us join this profession willingly. Nobody asks anybody or force anybody to join our society. It's a society of a very noble people.
All right. Okay. You are. I think we've lost you. So probably you need to restart. Engineer Babagana, President, we want you to restart, sir, because I think we can't. We've lost a bit of because of your network, maybe.
Thank you. Okay. Am I on now? Am I on?
Yes, we can hear you clearly now.
Thank you. I want to align myself with the protocol established by my chairman. Please stay within the protocols. COVID-19 is real. The second wave is equally real and more dangerous. We love you. We love your families. I don't want anybody to tell me if. There are no ifs in engineering.
Wait.
There are no ifs in engineering. So I want to enjoin all of you to please stay within the protocols. Let's observe the protocol, and the good Lord will protect all of us. Glasgow branch, you are doing good. Please keep on doing what you are doing. NSC is a society of the noble people, of very intelligent people. Every engineer is a person who is above average. So by this definition, we are all intelligent people. And so whatever we are going to do must be done intelligently. So I appreciate you all. Please, it's not about numbers. It's about the quality of presentation and the message it will deliver. So don't bother yourself with numbers. No. Who attend, who don't want to attend, fine. That's not an issue. But give me quality representation. Let me see.
Yeah, I think we've lost.
Carry on,
all right.
Go ahead.
Okay, President. I think you are trying to round up, sir. I think
I've rounded up. I said I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Engineer Babagana Mohammed, FNSC. That's the Nigeria Society of Engineers president there. And his position is as equal as the state governor there. So we appreciate you. Thanks for joining us there. All right, thank you. Without wasting much of our time, I want to hand over to Dr. Emmanuel Salifu to continue with the program. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. That's the Chairman, NSC Glasgow branch. And thank you again, National President, the #1 engineer in Nigeria, for joining us and for that welcome address. I would be moving on now to introduce our speaker for today. Very, very great profile. I'll do my best to read through very quickly. He calls it a short bio sketch, but I think it's quite loaded, but I'll read through it all and then invite him on board to talk. Right. So, our speaker for today is Professor Bola Ola. Professor Bola Ola is currently an acting dean of the Faculty of Clinical Sciences at the Lagos State University College of Medicine and an honorary consultant psychiatrist in the just a moment. Yeah, he's a member of the Lagos State Health Research Committee and Lagos Covid-19 response team. He's an associate editor in 2 international journals, the Journals of Psychosomatic Research and BMC Psychology. He's the founder and executive director of Productive Life Experience Advancement Center, PLEAC. Within the field of mood disorders, Professor Bola is a listed expert on depression on Expertscape and is a fellow of International Society of Affective Disorders, as well as of Japanese Society of Psychiatry and Neurology. Within the field of addiction, Professor Bola is a UNODC global trainer, strengthening family program facilitator, a national trainer in universal prevention curriculum, national coordinator for International Consortium of Universities on Drug Demand Reduction. He's the state coordinator for International Society of Substance Abuse Professionals. He's the ambassador of Community Anti-Drug Coalitions of America in Nigeria, an African regional representative for the International Program in Addiction Sciences. He has received awards, among which are a Certificate of Merit from the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency and NIDA ISAM Fellowship Grant Award. Professor Bola Ola is a 2012 Fulbright Scholar and Vice President of the Nigerian branch of Hubert H. Humphrey Fellowship Alumni Association. He was an invited lecturer at professorial level on the MSc in Global Mental Health at the University of Glasgow here from 2012 to 2019. Furthermore, He was a member of the Medical Personnel of African Women Championship in October 1998 and the FIFA/World Youth Championship in April 1999. Professor Bola Ola's research interest is focused on mental health needs of vulnerable population in Nigeria, such as children and adolescents, women, and those with chronic medical conditions. His research outputs in these areas have yielded over 100 peer-reviewed publications, with over 50 listed on PubMed, and with a Web of Science H-index of 21, Google Scholar H-index of 28, ResearchGate score of 34.91. He's one of the most cited psychiatrists in Nigeria and in Africa. Professor Bola Ola completed his undergraduate training at the Obafemi Awolowo University in 1997 from Ile-Ife, and he received fellowships in psychiatry from the faculties of psychiatry and the National Postgraduate Medical College of Nigeria and the West African College of Physicians in 2007. In addition, he has an international master's in mental health policy and services with distinction from New University of Lisbon, an international master's in addiction sciences with distinction in Virginia Commonwealth University, and he holds a PhD in applied social sciences. Among others, he has professional certification in rational emotive behavior therapy /CBT from Albert Ellis Institute in the United States, behavioral activation therapy from the University of Oxford, leadership and management in health from the University of Washington. Professor Ola is happily married and is blessed with 2 daughters who are into nursing and medicine. Indeed, we have a very great scholar, the great clinician here with us. I hand over the microphone and the platform now to Professor Bola Ola to give us a presentation on taking care of your mental health during the COVID-19 pandemic. Professor.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Salifu. I would like to say that it's a pleasure to be here. I recognize the governor, that's Engineer Mohammed Babagana, and also my dear brother, Dr. Olusegun Adediran. I think I should also stand on the existing protocol so that we don't waste too much time. Glasgow is home for me, having spent much time from 2012 to 2019. I visited quite some time, and when it was too cold, because my lectures were basically in January, so it's usually very cold. So I usually give some of my lectures by Skype then. So I'll be talking to you all about how to take care of a psychological makeup. I wouldn't be talking too much about the problems of mental health, but I'll be talking to you about what emotional problems could arise as a result of this pandemic that started around 2019. The world has witnessed pandemic before, but this one, I mean, in history, sometimes when you face the reality, it's not just like in history. So we are in a turbulent period, and one of the things that really affect us is our psychological makeup, because there is no health without mental health. So I'll go on to the next slide. So it's a considerable force, COVID-19, and it has actually forced us all over the world, and it has changed the patterns that we experience. We have various emotions, upheavals, then we have new experiences, and it's been what people refer to now as the new normal. So, but then a lot of things are happening, and how are we really coping with the new normal? Because like engineers that you are, it affects your patterns of work. It affects the way you interact with colleagues at work. It affects your freedom of expression, even at home and even in the society. So you've been exposed to new experiences. You have to cover your nose. And like Engineer Babagana said, you have to obey the protocols. And these protocols are not easy. These protocols are things that sometimes we feel that, why are we doing it? Particularly when you see cases rising, when you see people even get infected, even when they observe some of these protocols. So there are a lot of uncertainties going around. And so we have problems of emotions, worries, anxieties, sometimes shame, sometimes guilt. So how do we really understand this? So that's what I will be talking about in the next slide. So we see that our norms are changing. You could see the picture. I mean, the new norm is now social distancing. We wear face masks. Sometimes your colleagues, you can't even recognize them. There is this joke that if you owe someone money, this is the time to walk past the person because you wear face mask, you can't. So, and a lot of contact tracing, people's privacy are being eroded in some way. Then people are forced to have quarantine. Sometimes people, you find that you can't even travel the way we used to travel freely. Then sometimes you have to go into self-isolation, and that is serious business because a lot of people have emotional problems because of isolation, because of quarantine, a lot of uncertainties whether they are going to die. So some of these new norms is now spreading, and people are experiencing so many things, among which are guilt, shame. There are grief reactions because sometimes you have colleagues that have passed on. Sometimes you have colleagues who are near death, and sometimes you have relations that you are concerned about. And then we have anxiety, and people have to, from maybe the shame, the guilt, and the grief reactions, there are anxieties, there are concerns about what is the meaning of life. There are concerns about why am I really in this world? In fact, some people are saying that the world is coming to an end. So this has a lot of things that throw our emotions and our mental health into instability. And how do we restore this? Sometimes we experience outbreaks from non-essential circumstances. I mean, this is the second wave, but then I can tell you in Nigeria, some people don't just obey it. They throw parties, even burials. We can even see some national ceremonies where protocols are glaringly broken. And sometimes we get worried. This threw us into confusion. We are angry. Some people are angry at the government. When there was a case of people were sharing some relief materials, people don't get it, and people are apprehensive and things like that. Then we have conflicting public health messages. I mean, I can't be telling you about our experience with WHO. We don't even know who to believe now. So these are things that tug at our emotions. We have losses. We read newspapers daily. It is filled with bad stories about COVID. Sometimes we see this tiny thing that we don't see. It has caused so much damage. So the uncertainty is being prolonged. Let's go to the next slide. So I can recall here how the events that have come around because of COVID is leading to what I would say psychosocial stress. I mean, as engineers, you know what stress is. I know you would be able to tell me the difference between strain and stress, but I think both combined together, it's from our own individual personalities, looking at the events that we undergo, from the social circumstances that we face. These are all sources of stress, and they are producing changes in our emotional levels. We have basic emotions and we have self-conscious emotions. The basic emotions are emotions that actually tell us, that actually show us how are we surviving. get sad. We see people get anxious. We see people get worried. We see people get angry. So this is very, very basic, and we need to understand it, and we need to be able to deal with it. The self-conscious emotions are things that fall out from how we self-evaluate ourselves. When we self-evaluate ourselves as, oh, I'm a failure, because sometimes you just look at yourself, okay, fine, I've got to this stage, but I don't even understand anything about this world. What have I been able to achieve? COVID has forced us to start thinking about, okay, fine, what happens next? So sometimes we get ashamed, and sometimes we get embarrassed, which is just a low intensity of shame. And sometimes we get we evaluate our actions that may have caused injury to others. I know some people, they are healthy, but those that they are living with are not healthy. So it's a lot of concern for them. By the time they go out, sometimes they see that the person inside the house who shouldn't go out is coughing. Sometimes they have the guilt that, well, have I spread this thing to this person? You are very conscious of how do you go and visit people that, I mean, your parents that are old. So it's a lot of emotional trouble. You don't even know how to negotiate these things. So this has led to what I call the new motives. And these new motives are things that I call crises in terms of the knowledge, which I call epistemic crisis. You see, if I go further, what I mean by there is something that is called epistemic well-being. It is a situation where you are able to know what you want and what you need to know about this world in order for your life to go well. And there are three things that are attached to this. You need to have access to truth. You need to have access to authorities that can share truth to you. And you need to be able to discuss about these things. But with COVID, you just know that even the scientific evidences are not to be accepted. You get confused about the messages. So what do? Access to truth has become something that you can't even rely on. When it comes to the authorities, sometimes you don't even believe science again. Then that is why you find out, oh, ivermectin is good. Oh, there is this thing about one country in Africa. They use the peel of pineapple. So people get worried. Even in the UK, you see a lot of people trusting things and selling. People are even making gains based upon nothing. So you have crisis. The other thing is the existential crisis, the crisis of existence. How does life become meaningful? What is our purpose? So these are the things that create a lot of uncertainties. And so there is crisis when it comes to freedom and responsibility. There is crisis when it comes to death of people. It reminds you of your own fatality. And sometimes you just say, okay, have I really planned? Okay, what are my new plans? What if this happens to me? So these are things that now make life a bit unbearable, where sometimes you get very worked up and you become easily irritable. Sometimes you have anxiety, you may not be able to sleep. And sometimes you are just sad about life. You are so tired, you are bored. I've seen people who are just complaining that, okay, fine, I think I don't even want to live anymore. So these are the things that the new motives that are driving this cycle. So let's go to the next slide. So you could see that COVID is now very central. It disrupts our daily functioning. It causes emotional turmoil. It causes fear. And there are a lot of psychological symptoms that are there. And these are some of the things we'll be talking about. How do we get a hold on some of these psychological symptoms that is being revolving around COVID? So we see the events that, you can go to the next slide, that threaten our survival goals, our personal goals in life, our families, and we have threats as anxiety, we have views of depression and grief. So that's the main thing. So let's go on, please, to the next slide. So But the thing is that our brains have been wired to alert us to potential threats. But in terms of pandemics, we are likely to be more prone to what we call thinking errors. And these thinking errors will lead us to experience more stress. And so I will be talking majorly about how do we identify some of these thinking errors in us and how do we cope with it, because that would be the fulcrum of turning things around for us. Next slide, please. So these thinking errors are errors in thinking. They're very common and very habitual. In fact, we grow up with them. They are biased, negative thoughts. They have become so automatic. But then if these are left unchecked, they lead to a spiral of emotional patterns. But we need to start to know this to break up these bad habits and retrain our brain, particularly in this time of COVID, because you see people, they now subscribe to conspiracy theories, they subscribe to use things that you wouldn't ordinarily use. People start taking zinc, people start taking high dose of vitamin D. Why? It is because of fear. Then people get, in fact, it's been mentioned that a lot of families are under stress. The rate of maltreatment of children has increased. Rate of domestic violence has increased. Tiredness, loneliness has increased among people. So what do we do? And most of these things will be reduced to the way we appraise the events that are happening. And what are those thinking errors? The next slide, please. So one example is that I can go, let's start from the below, is the confirmation bias. Most people nowadays are looking for stories to confirm that problems are there. So that is confirmation bias. A lot of the times, people just want to confirm. There's a tendency to search and acknowledge information that confirms our beliefs. I mean, there's this, I think was in the first wave, that COVID is linked to 5G technology and actually they want to destroy the world. And there are some clips that people will be looking at, that is it. The Western world really wants to hurt us, or they are actually pushing us, Black people, into a lot of problems. In fact, there have been stories about more Blacks are dying than whites, and this has created a lot of confusion among us. So sometimes when we look for stories to confirm that without basing it on evidence, we are prone to get angry at some people. We are prone to get sad when it happens to some of our colleagues. We are prone to actually getting very anxious, and we may want to react by being revengeful or by actually hiding ourselves. So there is also another thing that people would have noticed. It is the fear of missing out. And the fear of missing out actually leads to something that I call the bandwagon effect. You see that during COVID, when there was a news out there that chloroquine was effective for COVID, or hydroxychloroquine, a lot of people went to the stores and finished buying out the drugs. That is panic buying, such that the people that have the need for hydroxychloroquine, people who have connective tissue disorders, could not even access them. When it was about gloves, hand gloves, people, in fact, most of the, I'm sorry, most of the senators were using N95 that doctors should be using in the hospital. And that caused a lot of problems. It shifted blames to people, supplies were cut short, and that is one error of thinking that is referred to as fear of missing out. So there's a tendency following from it to blindly follow the action of others. We do that a lot. Even in Nigeria, we see a lot of hold-ups. When you see cars that are turning, you see all other cars turning as if in panic, whereas there may not be any other thing. So this is something that we need to start thinking about. What I'm doing, what is the evidence for it? How is it affecting my psychological makeup? So the next one is the action bias. We think that by doing something, such as stockpiling things in our home, we may mitigate the unknown risks that is related to COVID. I know a lot of people have jars of ivermectin at home now. That is something that we need to start, because it underlies anxiety, it underlines uncertainty that we are expressing in these behaviors. And these are some of the problems of our thinking patterns. Next slide, please. So, okay, fine. I think I've been able to, because the action bias leads to a lot of overcrowding, because you find out that they're saying, okay, fine, don't do this, don't overcrowd, but because we want to mitigate certain unknown risks, people go out. A very common case in Nigeria is when there is this NIN registration. Actually, that is caused by the government. But then, because they are going to shut off people from having their SIM card registered. So you see a lot of people going to these centers and they are overcrowded. And this might actually lead to even the spread of the COVID. So let's go to the next slide. So explains this, the missing out. We have images of empty shelves. It creates anxiety. If I don't have this, I may not be able to protect my family. If I don't protect my family, they are going to die. If they die, the whole blame would be on me. And that is something we need to start thinking about and balance it out. Next slide, please. So this, I've talked about it, and the consequences are many. We have a lot of emotional and behavioral problems from it. Sometimes people cannot even sleep. They are only looking for, there's a time that a lot of people had sleep problems. Why did they have sleep problems? Because they consulted me. And when I asked, most of the information that they were looking for is to confirm that the death rate from COVID is rising. So they are only looking, oh, this COVID is, then there are some people, they are only concerned about COVID is not real. So when people die, they look for information just to say that it is not death by COVID. So, and that could also lead to behavioral problems such that they don't even give a damn. They don't wear masks. They say that COVID is from people who travel abroad. So when a big man dies, they say, well, he's the one that traveled abroad. I don't travel abroad, so I don't need to have COVID. So that would also lower their guard in actually obeying the protocols. So, and there are some people, they will just say that, well, whatever you do, you will still get COVID. So why bother? Because they say COVID can travel from 4 miles, COVID stays for 48 hours. So they are looking for information to confirm that. I'm speaking very broadly, because sometimes when I speak broadly like that, you may be able to pick some of these patterns that are within your own behavioral habits day in, day out. And that is what would guide you in also leading yourself to the spiral of emotional or behavioral problems. So let's go to the next slide. So what are some of these errors of thinking that can cause anxiety? Catastrophizing, well, from the word, it's called catastrophe. That is blowing things up. When you have a situation, you just see the worst case scenario. Seeing the worst case scenario is that, fine, the worst is going to happen. And when you all the time without evidence, you are imagining the worst case scenario, your thinking is going to lead you to anxiety problems. The second one is about dichotomous thinking. Only thinking is either black or white. A lot of times when we think in either two ways, there are only two options to think. There is no other alternative. It forces us to have anxiety. Then there are other things like should statements. Should statements is that this is the way things must be done. This is the way things are done traditionally. Because some people, that will lead to a lot of anxiety, because if things are not done that way, then, I mean, some people are also saying things that you shouldn't wear masks. because when you wear mask, it leads to low oxygen. And when you have low oxygen, then you are not going to survive. So why must you wear mask? So the thing is like, it's a must. You must not do that. So that also leads to anxiety. So these are some of the things I would want us to look at. Some of these thinking errors. I would want you to actually go Google them and find out how they may be playing out in your own way of viewing the world and how it's leading people to have anxiety. So let's go on to the next slide. So I will talk a bit about what is it called? The optimism bias here. That's the second to the last. It is a thinking error that causes someone to believe that they themselves are less likely to experience a negative event. Let us relate it to COVID. Some people will say, I'm covered by the blood of Jesus Christ, and so I cannot have COVID. That is a thinking error. And because of that, they don't obey the protocols of COVID. So you can see that the self-care practice that is needed is being undermined by the way such a person thinks. There's another thing, the ostrich effect. It's a cognitive error that causes someone to avoid information that they perceive as potentially unpleasant. Such a person is not likely to listen to news again because it is rubbish, because he just wants to. So it's just like an ostrich. Even when the news are there for him or her to take caution, they are not there. So that is the ostrich. That's a thinking error that will relegate self-care practice. The next one is the normalcy bias. It's a way of thinking that causes someone to disbelieve or minimize threat warnings. For instance, in COVID, when they say that, well, the first wave is gone, and like in Nigeria, we all believe that it's not going to come back again. So we don't even, when cases are rising again, they say, no, 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 no. In fact, the government is making what is called the normalcy bias, because they say that, well, we cannot even force people to stay at home because it's going to injure the economy. So they believe that, so whatever the cases are rising, they said we would not going to act because we don't believe that is necessary to create another lockdown. So those are some of the things that, then there is this just word hypothesis. We have this thinking error where we believe that persons' actions are inherently inclined to bring a moral. I mean, let me just say it this way. The example is that all actions are eventually rewarded. So if you do good, you reap good. If you do bad, you reap bad. So most people that have COVID are reaping the reward of their bad action. So that actually makes someone not even help others or not to contribute to building a society, because that may actually make you to be very distant from others. When other people are coughing, you run away from them because they are bad people, and things like that. And it actually causes sometimes strains within a workplace. Next slide, please. So I've explained in this slide how, yes, now go on to the next one. So people who suffer anxiety have excessive worries. They look at the world in a way that makes the world seem more dangerous than it really is. And they don't imagine outcomes that are neutral. And they have this inability to tolerate uncertainty. In fact, that is why a lot of people will entertain more conspiracy theories. That is why people who cannot tolerate, okay, fine, I have conflicting news. Because of that, I get worked up. I worry. In fact, worry is more about things that are going to happen in the future. What if this happens? What if that happens? What am I going to do? But then you don't even have evidence about what is going to happen in the future. You may even be relying on very little thing, and you magnify it, and that causes you anxiety. When I talk about anxiety here and how we could even self-monitor ourselves. So I put here a scale to measure anxiety, which is the general anxiety disorder scale measure. So it's 7-item scale. You can download it on the net. You can actually use it to monitor whether you are becoming very anxious or not. And this is going to actually help you to be able to say, okay, well, I have a bit of mild anxiety, although if I have a bit of moderate to severe anxiety, you may want to seek help. So the next we'll be talking about, let's go to the next slide. We'll be talking about how do you manage your anxiety. Basic tips that I would want us to share. We should be able to challenge our thinking using the knowledge of the thinking errors that we may be prone to. And once we're able to identify such thinking errors, like I said before, we need to get accurate information to challenge those thoughts. Another way of challenging, of actually making sure that we are not prone to such thoughts, is to limit our exposure to graphic news stories that could affect us negatively. In fact, it's been advised that you need to keep a pattern, a kind of diary to show that when I'm in the midst of these certain people, they increase my level of anxiety. And when you find such people, you may want to really have a bit of distance from them. And you need to also mind conspiracy theories. Another good thing that could work for our mild cases of anxiety is practicing mindfulness. Mindfulness is being present. That's the simplest way I can put it. Notice that, like we're talking, listen to my voice. A lot of times when some other people are talking, your mind is racing about the next thing to do. You are not even listening to the person. So when you practice mindfulness, you are aware of yourself as a being, you are aware of your surroundings, you can even count your breath, you can look at things that you are seeing. That brings you to the moment. It takes you away from worries, which is attached to future or past problems. So practicing mindfulness helps in relieving anxiety. Then when you also practice relaxation exercises, there are a lot of relaxation exercises that you will find on the net. One of them is breathing. When you breathe, that is called deep breathing. When you breathe deeply, it relaxes you. And what actually happens when you are relaxed? When you are relaxed, there's no anxiety, because relaxation and anxiety, they are mutually exclusive. So for some other people that may have isolation or may be in quarantine or they may be exposed, they want to shut themselves out of other people, they can use technology to stay connected. That actually lowers the anxiety. Let's go to the next slide, please. So, well, depression is also another emotional problems that could arise from thinking errors. Sometimes people become helpless. There is nothing else to do. It's going to come. Or there is hopelessness. They look at the future is bleak. And they also think that, well, they don't have any problem solving capacity. And these are things that result from some thinking errors. For instance, catastrophizing, that means blowing things out of proportion. You can also have selective abstraction, where you take a little thing and from that little thing, you spread it to other things. Maybe because you had a error in your driving at work, you may just think that, oh, I've made this mistake. I'm only going to make mistakes all my life. So maybe I forgot to wear my mask. And because I forgot to wear my mask, then I would have been exposed to COVID. Then you become sad, you become depressed because of that single event. So that is what sometimes leads to our depressive thinking. And then we view ourselves as worthless. We may view the world as not helpful. We may view, the world as bleak. It's nothing to gain in this world. the meaning of life is also, I mean, life becomes meaningless, and then we see others in negative ways. So, but then, what are the things that could drive this, that we could break in our own personal life? We should need to take the time to look at how we are drawing conclusions. Are we magnifying issues? Are we looking for the worst case scenario in all things? Are we just taking one single thing to represent another thing? These are the things that we need to, because when we are careful about the way we think, we are trying to actually break that spiral that can lead to mild or moderate depression. So the next slide, please. So I have a scale, it's called PHQ-9. It's called Patient Health Questionnaire 9. It has 9 items. We can use it for ourselves when we think that we are becoming sad, and we can score ourselves and see whether we are crossing a threshold. There is mild, there is moderate, there is severe. For those who cross the threshold of moderate to severe, it will be better for them to seek expert advice. For those cases of mild depression, we can also engage in exercise. We can practice mindfulness. Sometimes it's very key to keep gratitude journals, particularly in these times of COVID. We record our positive experiences, because when we record our positive experiences, it shifts us away from those negative experiences that are causing us to have what I would refer to as depressed thinking, that can also lead to what I would say is the behavior of depression. So let's go to the next slide. So shame, it's about when we focus on ourselves and we think that we are poor, and these are things that come from the should statements to ourselves. It must be done this way, it should be done this way, and if it's not done that, if I don't do it that way, I feel ashamed of myself. If I don't do it that way and it injures others, I feel guilt. So, and the lower intensity of shame is called embarrassment. So a lot of times we have some of these things tug at us in our daily life. Sometimes we are ashamed of what we've done because of exposing others. We are guilty of what we've done because we have exposed others to COVID, or if we don't do it the right way, we feel ashamed because of what we have been engaged in. And these are some of the things that we need to monitor in order to keep our mental health. Next slide, please. So, well, these are components of shame. It occurs within social context. We have negative self-evaluations of ourselves that can now lead to different emotions. We are angry at ourselves. We may be angry at others. We have anxiety. We have self-disgust. And sometimes it leads to a behavioral change where we may decide to take revenge on others, or to deny ourselves of certain things, or to have social withdrawal. So that's just it about shame. Next slide, please. So we've talked about guilt. I think we can just go on from there to the next slide. So how do we manage guilt? There's a useful way of thinking about it. It's about there's this control, influence, and accept. You have to be able to recognize situations that you can control and others that you can't control. So in cases where you may not be able to control, you know that you may have done things to the best of your ability, and where you can do otherwise, you have just to accept that that is the situation. In fact, accepting that you genuinely cannot control or influence something is not a sign that you are ineffective, passive, or uncaring. It's also giving you control over your emotions. It doesn't mean that within the situation you have not tried your best, but it allows you to free up your mental and emotional resources so that you can attend to other things, so that you can also channel your energy to other things. Because when you start feeling guilty, it draws on your energy, it draws on your makeup, it affects you, it actually impedes on your work performance, your social interactions. And so it is something that we can work on by using this mental model of, can I control it? Can I influence it? If I can't control it, have I done the things to the best of my ability rather than feeling guilty? So when you feel guilty, I think it's just a signal that there may be, I mean, for you, you may have to think through the situation that is making you to feel guilty. So that's the thing I want you to take away from managing guilt. Next slide, please. So, yes, I talk about grief very early in this presentation, and it's related to a range of losses. It could even be imagined. Am I going to lose my job? Because a lot of people have been thrown out of job because of a lot of restrictions in COVID. So when there is this thought of loss of job or loss of income, the feelings that you have about that is grief. So how do we cope about this? One way is to be mindful, because at the moment, there is something that you can control. There are some things you can influence. There are things that you just need to accept. And there is this saying that when one door closes, another one opens. So how do you use your energy to look for the door that has opened instead of banging at the door that is closed? So that is the thing. So while you calmly acknowledge and accept thoughts about, okay, fine, I know that there's likelihood that I'm going to lose this job, but then rather than keep grieving and have anxiety or depression, what are the things I can do for myself within my space of influence to get me another thing? And if you can't, you can socially connect, because two heads are better than one, and because you can look for resources and you can connect with people in order to lower these emotional problems that can block the way of your thinking. So let's go to the next slide. So, well, this is something I found useful. I've used it in some of my presentations. It's about how do we cope with the stress and fear from COVID. 3 or 4 major things here. We need to have self-care. But I can, like I said before, what are some of our thinking patterns that prevent us from self-care? We need to take care of those thinking patterns. But other than that, we need to exercise regularly. We need to get plenty of sleep. We need to eat healthy, balanced meals. Then we can virtually connect with others. Talk with people that you trust, underlie that trust about your concerns and how you are feeling, so that you can share your thoughts and if you need an expert advice, I will be going through the last slide where you can actually have expert advice in Glasgow, where I didn't talk about Nigeria, but then I know that there are Nigerians here who would want, who live in Nigeria, who might want some sources of help. So take breaks from watching or reading news or stories that could actually increase your level of anxiety. Then I think it's a good thing to unwind. Play with your kids, play with your spouse. Don't just wound up in bed and cover up your head and things like that. I know that even when I was in the US during the time of slow and I had to stay indoors for some certain number of days, I started having some feelings of depression. That was when I had to go out. I had to go and do exercise. I had to connect with others. I had to phone home. And that actually helped me to break from it. So during these COVID times, whether you're in isolation, whether you are in quarantine, or whether you are a little bit bored because of the way things are going, because of uncertainties, you need to unwind. You need to break out from that. Those are the things, they help. They may look very insignificant, but they are significant when put into action. So let's go to the next slide. So this is about how do you, because a lot of times we have fake news. We don't even know. We are deluged with a lot of news. But this is something that could help us to spot fake news. The source, the author, the date. In fact, there are sometimes when people post things about people dying, when you really look at the video, it may have been videos of things that happened in the 50s or things that happens in the 90s, not the present video. So, and if we don't check, you may just be worried about nothing. Then check your thinking errors. Read beyond the headlines, because headlines can just be outrageous. It may not even tell you about the whole story. Check for supporting sources, and then just look, could it just be a joke? Then ask experts. If there are certain sites that are called fact checks, you may be able to listen, to go to those sites, and that would actually reduce your anxiety, or it will deflate your thinking errors such that you don't go into emotional overload. So let's go to the next slide. So, well, I know that we're all adults, but I had a bit of thinking that, well, some of us have children, whether they are grown or not grown, because during this time of COVID, a lot of children have this loss of drive to achieve tasks because of restraints. Some of them because they've suppressed their physical capability, and they have exhaustion, they cannot express themselves. So they develop clingy behavior. Some of them are forgetful. Some of them because they just eat and eat, they have weight gain. Some of them because they are boredom, they don't even want to, they just go into the kitchen and heat and heat. These are some of the things we may notice in some of these kids and adolescents, and we may need to be able to advise them with some of the tips that I'm going to give in the next slide. Next slide, please. So this will let us know that even these kids also get affected by events. I told you events leads to psychosocial stress. So they have this knowledge that there's a potentially life-threatening disease, and it is persistent. So that could create anxiety in them. So if we don't talk to them to give them facts, they will continue to have mounting anxieties. Then the effect of extensive overriding preventive measures. Don't go here, don't go there, you must not go out, you must cover your nose. We need to be able to also get them to start thinking about this. Then sometimes they are aware that, oh, mommy is catching cold, or one of my friends has caught COVID. They know, and that could cause a lot of problems, emotional problems that we also have in them. So let's go to the next slide. So for this, our young ones, we should be open and listen to them. Let them talk freely to us. Ask them open questions. Find out what they already know. Find out whether they are being fed with misinformation. We need to know that. In fact, when you don't even have information, be honest to answer them truthfully. You can say, I don't know. I would find out more. But then you are socially connecting with them. You are lessening the uncertainties that they're also entertaining, and you are helping them to remove, or to reduce the levels of stress that is leading to anxiety or emotional problem to them. So your children may be scared or confused. Give them space to share how they are feeling, and let them know that you are always there for them. Be heroes and not bullies. Let's now slide, please. So this is something that I found is called a coping calendar. It helps us to stay calm, to stay wise, and be kind. So you could make a plan to help you keep calm and stay in contact with people on your first day. You can modify it, but it's something that is creative. The 25th day talks about look for the good in others. Rather than looking for the negative things in people, look for the good in others and notice their strengths. When you connect to them on that level, you are helping to secure a positive social connection. Sometimes you may just have to reach out to people. Day 27, thank 3 people you've been grateful to and tell them why. It can buoy them out of their depression or take them out of the anxiety feelings. For day 20, make time for self-care. Do something kind for yourself. You can eat well, you can do exercise. So these are things that they are actionable things that don't cost you much for your happiness in these trying times. The next slide, please. So we talked about self-care. Your self-care needs to border on your physical self, your emotional self, your social self, and your spiritual self. I would like to remind us that it is very unhelpful when we use coping strategies such as drugs, which in the long term can worsen our physical, emotional, social, and spiritual well-being. So let's go to the next slide. So these are basic things about coping with quarantine and isolation. You may have to combat monotony. You create a sense of personal. You engage in activities that would not be destructive. You can engage in internet-enabled entertainment and things like that. You can do breathing exercises. To combat low mood and motivation, you can focus on your small achievements and what sense of competence you've been able to achieve over these few times. Some people say, oh, I've not been able to go to work, or you've been able to reach out to others. You've been able to do some works. You've been able to transfer some files to some people. These are things that you might be grateful for. Let's go to the next slide. So we in this present time, we need to actually assess family support. There are ways of accessing family support, digital methods, social media, online conversations, and these are things that, when technology is bringing out these things, maybe it's in preparation for COVID or how to surmount COVID problems, isolation and things like that. So let us make use of the social media, the ones that are trusted, although, we have to be very careful. There are a lot of things on social media that may be transmitting fear and anxiety related problems. So we also need to be careful in that way. So let's go to the next slide. So this is just to tell us that even during this period where you may not be able to go out during lockdowns or movement is a bit restricted, there are options, remote options of psychological support, and these are in place. There is telephone support programs in various places. There are online emotional counseling support for those who may, if you use the GAD-9 and find out that you are moderately anxious, or if you use the PHQ-9 and you find out that you are moderately depressed, there may be a need to reach out for emotional counseling support that are out there. There may be a need to find online psychotherapy through video conferencing platforms. And there are also apps that we can use to psychoeducate ourselves to promote our wellness. I think I'm coming to the last slide, which is the question and answers. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so
much.
Yeah, thanks so much, Professor Bola Ola, for this education. And also, I would say this is something we shouldn't be getting for free. Most times you go to get medical support, at a clinic for information like this at this kind of time. We appreciate you for this knowledge you've shared with us. Very invaluable and highly helpful. Very, very helpful. Listening to it, I've seen areas where I need to work on even my own self, and areas where I can talk to so many people about things we can do to change our minds and thoughts within this period. I like the idea of mindfulness, the idea of looking on the positive side of our contributions. Most times we dwell on negatives and it affects us deeply. There's a whole lot to absorb here. And I think so many people will have questions to ask at this point. So I'll be handing over to my colleague, Engineer Sharp Ugocha, who will be handling the Q&A session so that other people can interact with Professor Bola Ola and also speak on to the topics that have been raised in this very wonderful talk. Thank you so much, Professor. And over to you, Engineer Sharp.
Thank you very much once again to Professor, and at the same time, thank you, viewers, for joining. Please, if you want to ask a question, you may just put it down or raise your hand electronically so that we can spot you. And okay, I've seen one hand up already, and we'll do that. We'll just take the names and call you up. Please unmute yourself and you speak. If you want to be on camera, that's fine, so that we could also read your lips and see your body language so that the question will be well understood. So first question is coming from Afolabi Adeoshun. Afolabi Adeoshun, please ask your question.
Yeah, Dr. Bola, thank you very much for an insightful topic. I was gripped all the way through, very well presented and very informative. Thank you very much. One of the key issues from a layman perspective, the question has always been asked about this COVID issue is that, and you mentioned it briefly, on the area of color and race. You cannot say that a lot of Black people or people of color do not have good grievances in saying that, look, we have not had enough information about this. Yes, we as African or Black or people of color are being the front line, and a lot of our people, according to the statistic, have been dying. However, saying to ourselves and say, look, we haven't had enough information to be able to say categorically that what is out there is of benefit fully for all of us. I say that because even from the experts, specifically from the American side of things, the information coming from them are so confusing, and it's very, very difficult to be able to untangle them and come to a conclusion. What do you say to that? What can you say from your point of view, from the psychological aspect of things, to help people of color in a number of communities, not just only myself that got this view, in a number of communities are saying to themselves, no, I am not touching that thing. What will you say?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Adeoshun. It's a very excellent question. You know, when I was talking about the epistemic crisis, it's just about epistemic simply is knowledge. So when we don't have the knowledge about describing certain things, when things happen faster than scientists are getting at it, there's a lot of confusion that will be going on there.
Sure.
And when it comes to even self-preservation, some people would rather identify with their race, and that may also underlie the fact that there is what is called health inequity, even in what is called the management of the situation. So, but then to come back to this lecture, really, how do conflicting informations tug at our emotions? How does it? Because I would want us to look at it in terms of if it creates some anger. What is the trigger? The trigger may be the conflicting information and the events that we see people of color being marginalized. So that would take us to think through about how do we now interpret this. That is where the cognitive thinking mode is very, very necessary. And that is what I made mention of in the control, influence, and accept. What is it that we can control as a critical mass of people of color? How do we work together to create a common front? Because if we don't do that, we will just lapse into this depressive mode of thinking. So someone told me, he said, look, why don't you, and he told me that when they created that Black magazine called Ebony, why can't we create a site for ourselves that gives us the relevant information that is necessary for people of color who may have been marginalized out of information? That will reduce the level of anxiety that we have or the level of suspiciousness that we have to other people of color. So it's about managing our emotions now. The reality is out there. What can we control? What can we influence? And what is the level of acceptance that we get? It may sound too broad, but the thing is that sometimes I've had colleagues who told me that they even push them out to areas where the COVID is dense. So, and I said, fine. The thing is just that, okay, how do you keep to the protocols? Then how do you make sure that, okay, when these things happen, there's a rotation of this thing, of going to this area and going to this area, because definitely when you look at are things that are being done, are they serving the human right justice? So, because these are things that we need to start to look at, rather than dwelling on that it will always be our portion to be restricted to this thing. So we need to start thinking on the positive things that we can control as a group, that we can socially have as a network. When the Nigerian Society of Engineers called me, I said, oh, fine, it's a good opportunity to talk to my brothers. We have experts that we can relate to who are people of color who can give us the right information. So when there is this epistemic crisis, when we have lack of access to truth, we can rely on experts that can give us credible access to truth. When we don't have access for dialogue, we can rely on people who, because when these things are broken down, when there's a breakdown on access to truth, when there's a breakdown on access to experts and access to dialogue, that is what leads us to what we call crisis, and sometimes leads us to buying the conspiracy theories. And conspiracy theories never work. So when we do that, we are just going down the spiral of anxiety, anger, and things like that. So to be able to break that, we need to work as a group to have our own cogent, credible access to truth. We need to be able to work as a group to have access to who are the experts that can sieve out some of these things that are becoming conflicting to us as a whole group. Then, even as an individual, we may be able to look for facts that at least can enhance our survival. I talked about events that could threaten our survival, events that could threaten our view of ourselves. So when we see it that way broken down, then we are working towards restoring our emotional balance. I hope I've been able to address it a little bit.
You have. Thank you very much. There's a lot more to this, in the sense that, if you don't mind me just taking one small second, in the sense that in the community, especially the community of color, where disproportionately in the mental home and in various other institutions, we are the large number of people there. And when you're going to get post this COVID, because I'm worried about the community, I'm worried about people of color. I see this thing can be a really big issue in 2-3 years' time once everything is settled down. That's one of the reasons why I asked the question. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I agree with you totally. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Ola, Bola Ola, please fill in your question. Ola, Bola Ola.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Professor, for the lecture. He has taught us managing stress even beyond and coping with our mental health, different mental health issues, even beyond COVID. Now, if we would work with what you gave us, and we manage our situation, and we manage our situation for a while. My question is, how long do you think we have to do this? Is our world changed forever? Is this a new? Or is it possible that very soon we will be able to return to the status quo? Or do we just turn ourselves to, I don't even think it's going to be managed anymore. Do we change our lifestyle to begin to suit COVID? Has it come to stay? or we will manage it for now and very soon things will go back to normal? What do you think, Prof?
Thank you very much, sir. And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I hope you would not mind that I use what you have said as an example of some of the thinking that I've been able to mention. When I hear you say that, what do you think would happen? It's one of the thinking that is about trying to read the future. I know that we like to see patterns, but then why can't we just do what we have to do now? Because it is what we do now that may actually build into the future. That is one way I would want us to think. The other way is that must we go back to the old pattern? And we are saying it's a must that the old pattern should come. And that is why we are looking at it from what I hear you say, are we becoming so intolerant of the present situation? Because if our tolerance level of the present situation is becoming very low, then I mean that we are becoming very intolerant. We are building ourselves up to becoming very anxious, and we are spiraling our emotions. I wouldn't be able to even answer that because I myself am like you. I don't know what holds in the future really. But the other thing that I would want all you to look at, sometimes when we look at historical information, it doesn't really give the right thing about what will happen in the future, but it can tell us a bit about what we may expect, what we may not expect. And when we read about even the Spanish flu or the other pandemics that had ravaged the world in the past, there is first wave, there is second wave, there is third wave, then afterwards, there is something, it goes down. So looking from that, one might want to predict, but then one might also want to also stay within the moment while we are expecting that there may be changes. So these are some of the things, because if we worry too much about the future without having a lot of facts, we are actually unsettling our emotions. So, and that is the spirit of the principles that I've tried to address in this lecture. I won't want to encourage the optimism bias. I won't want to have the normalcy bias. Neither would I want to also have the ostrich bias. I just want us to, what is it that is within our circle of influence at the moment? And let us start going from there. That is what my advice would be based on what I've said within the lecture. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Prof.
Thank you, Prof. Okay, now let's take one more question from Bosede Oyekunle. Bosede.
All right, thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. The chairman of NFB Glasgow branch, thank you for bringing this up. And I would like to commend Professor Bola. Thank you for a very informative delivery. I'll go straight to my question, which is probably a little bit off of your presentation. Some months back, I think the governor of Lagos State specifically talked about anyone that comes into the hospital with malaria symptoms should be treated as a COVID case. And for me, that was a bit worrisome. I believe the medical association should take a position on that, looking at the experience we've had when you get into the clinic, a test needs to be run before the diagnosis is being proffered. So I'd like you to just share a little bit of insight, if you know about this, and what is the association doing about it? Should every cases be taken or treated as COVID? These days, I think because of that, some people would have malaria and they are just doing home treatment instead of going into the hospital. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ma. It's a wonderful question, very insightful as well. I would go a bit back into an experience that I had when I was doing my Fulbright. I went to the University of Syracuse and actually went for a workshop on leadership in crisis. And we did a lot of simulations, and one of us was the governor of that district, of the state. And when there was crisis, I think we tried to simulate the 9/11. A lot of information was coming to the governor. And for him to be able to even see, and he wanted to be seen as being active. So because of that, there were errors in some information that were being churned out. And I can also let you, you also remember that even the WHO, they had conflicting messages. And this is something that happens because when I saw that happen to the structure of WHO, I remember that workshop that I had far back in 2011, 2012 in Syracuse University. That is not to excuse the governor. That is not to, but I can, what I'm trying to say is that it does happen. But the thing is that this crisis in knowledge, this crisis in how we used to do things that are getting wrong, we need to start having what we call a rethinking. So what you are saying about what is the medical association doing, I can tell you that the medical association, there are a lot of associations that have written to the governor that they are willing to help. Then, people that surround him would have to pick. So how do you get his attention? I know that there are some people there was one person who tried to tell him about the implication of some of these public health messages and what it could cause. So I would say it's a work in progress. And I know that people are telling him that this may not be the right thing to do. This may not be the right thing to say. But within the control of certain hospital agencies, while we are being mindful, because like what we are saying, if everybody is assumed to have COVID, sometimes people will run away from them. In fact, we've seen cases even in Ghana where someone who who arrived at the airport, went into asthmatic attack. They all left him, but by the time they were able to, they took him before the COVID test came, which was negative. He had gone into what is called status asthmaticus, and he died. So these are things that they are events that should shape our quality assurance. I'm not saying that we should allow such events to happen before we know exactly what to do, but I'm saying that there are certain issues that when they crop up, we use it to feed back into the system to make sure that the system is able to bear the stress that comes. So like you brought this to my attention, now I will see what exactly is being done, because I'm actually in contact with the permanent secretary and see whether things can be done to make sure that this looks much better. Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you. Emmanuel, over to you. I think that's the last question with, indicated questions of people who indicated to ask questions. So I leave it to Coordinator Emmanuel if you want to make a final call for another round of question or any more comments.
Thank you very much, Engineer Sharp, for coordinating that session, and very big thanks again to Professor Bola Ola for answering the questions so well. If anyone has any other question, there is still enough time to take one or two more. Is there a question in the chat somewhere? No. Okay. If none. Okay, so appreciations coming in the chat. It's been a wonderful session. So I guess Prof has done a very great job. And I believe we'll be able to imbibe most of the advice that Prof has given today about managing information and how to cope and also how to support other people within this period. I had a complicated experience as well. My first winter here in Scotland, when the daytime and the nighttime was we had shorter daytime. Everything was getting really dark quite early, and you know, combine that with the cold, and now with COVID-19, it's quite you know, overwhelming. And some of these tips are really going to be helpful personally, professionally, and for many people as well, I believe. Okay, without further waste of time, I'll just call Prof back again once more, just a final remarks of wrapping everything all up. I think you've said most of it in the questions and the answers, but if we'd say, what line would you want people to remember if we forget everything you've said today? What should we take home and work with? Or what should we practically take home and not forget? That is a point you want to really resound and put out there. I know you've said it over and over again, but maybe just re-emphasizing it once again, that will be helpful. And if you have any advice for the Nigerian Society of Engineers on maybe how to help and support mental health of our members, you know, in general. Also, the national president is here, and you might want to give some advice to how we can do this as a professional organization. That would be helpful as well.
Well, I think coming from the last thing you said, there is nothing wrong in having regular sessions with professionals to talk about, maybe have a chit chat with them about what they struggle with, and if they might want some kind of online support for that, or even regular lectures about how to get help. Particularly emotional support. So it's something that we can offer to the Nigerian chapter of engineers. So that's something. So, but as a final remark, let us know that there is no health without mental health. And what actually underlies a good mental health is to observe these three things. Our thinking is what leads to the emotions that we have and leads to the behavior that we have. So thinking, thoughts, feelings, and behavior. So if we are able to tweak our thoughts in the positive ways, we would have positive feelings and we will have positive behaviors. So thinking, feelings, behavior. If you want to have a healthy behavior, you have healthy thinking, healthy feelings, and healthy behavior. If there is unhealthy thinking, there will be unhealthy feelings, and there will be unhealthy behavior. That is my final remarks. Thank you very much.
That is a very, 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 very wonderful final remark, I must say. I think.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's. I'm happy I asked that question.
You're right, Doctor. I can't agree less. That's a very powerful summary, and no, it's thank you so much, Prof. We will, Professor Bola. We really appreciate you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Always my pleasure.
Thanks so much. So I'll just run through quick announcements, and then I'll call back I think the branch secretary is online for a vote of thanks, but some announcements before the vote of thanks. Our next webinar is a technical one. I think all engineers should be interested in this one. It's on computational fluid dynamics. We're looking at an introductory session and also practical industrial applications. And this will be facilitated by Dr. Oluyinka Bamiro. He's a global simulator owner of the fuel systems VDDV for General Motors. Quite an outstanding expert in this area. And we'll be hosting this on the 13th of March, 2021. That's exactly 1 month from today, 4 p.m. UK time, 5 p.m. Nigerian time. The final poster and other details will be communicated across our various channels, and you can spread the word around for other people to prepare and participate in this. Also, our sister branch, the NSC London UK branch, will be hosting a webinar on the 20th of February, that's next Saturday. And the title is Beyond Automation, 5G-driven communication and control system co-design for Industry 4.0. This is a very big one also as well. And the speaker is Engineer Dr. Laolua Popola. He will be speaking on this wonderful topic next Saturday. So keep a date with the NSC London branch for this webinar. The details are there and also be shared across our various channels. Next up here is from the NSC Manchester branch. This is like our twin sister branch, I would say, and they'll be speaking on they'll be having their February general meeting and technical session on the 26th of February, the last Friday of February. And the topic they'll be looking at is the application of artificial intelligence for partial discharge pattern recognition and its implications on the power industry. Another powerful one there about power, AI, and all of those topics combined. And doing justice to that will be Dr. Abdullahi Abubakar Masood from Saudi Arabia, University Prince Saud bin Research Center there in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The theme is energy management, and the details are also there. The chairman and the branch members will be sharing more details across various communication platforms. So I'll be calling on the branch secretary, Engineer Charles Okafor, for a vote of thanks. Engineer Charles, if you're present, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel, and very many thanks to our presenter. We do appreciate the time and effort you've put in for this particular presentation. It has been awesome, and actually is you know, it is actually needed at this time. Very many thanks for doing all that. I believe if not anyone myself has taken something that I will go away today. Again, I want to especially thank I think the president, Bagana, for coming on board, and also a special thanks to the various branch chairmen who may have been here, and obviously to our wonderful members and host of others. We so much appreciate your presence here. Without you, nothing is going on here. So thank you, and thank you one more time. Over to you, Emmanuel.
Thank you very much. So that'll be all from us. I just want to say that we have our various channels. You can engage with us at the NSC Glasgow. We have a YouTube channel, and this webinar will be uploaded very shortly on that channel as well. You can watch all our other previous webinars. We have a Twitter handle, NSC Glasgow. You can follow us and be updated with our information and all our activities. We're also on Facebook, and you can reach us via that email, and our website is up and running as well for further details if you would want to. So we look forward to further engagements in different areas. Any area you want to reach out to us for, you're most welcome. We're open and happy to collaborate and cooperate and work together in different areas. So thanks once again for your patience. Thanks for being around on this session. We look forward to having you on other sessions. And don't forget, there's no health like if there's no mental health, as the professor has said. And learn to have positive thinking as it influences your emotions and behaviors. And this is important because every other aspect of life wraps into it. So I wish you a very wonderful positive thinking through the COVID-19 period, and hope that you come out victorious. We all come out victorious. If at all there is a coming out of it, even though Prof said we should live in the moment and make the best of it. I think I've been a good student, and I hope you've been too. And we hope that these things will help us through as we move on. Thanks once again, and have a very good evening wherever you are, and enjoy the times. That'll be all from us. Bye-bye.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining, and don't forget to keep eyes on our website. And thank you. Thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
I think we can stop recording now. Yeah.